Hey, welcome to the Fireside Tattoo Podcast. I am your host, Jake. This is our co-host, Nick Baxter. He's one of the very few three-timers. Is that what we call him? Fireside or there's something should work with that. Three-time fire.
Three-time champ.
Three-time champ.
Or five-time champ.
Huh?
I don't know.
I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to talk tonight about that one year whenever the Grizzlies were an 8 seed and they upset the number 1 seed Spurs.
That's right.
Yeah. It was a beautiful time. It's been a long time. So Nick is in town and we just finished up a one-day still life painting workshop, which was fun.
It was great, yeah.
Yeah, Studio 688, and we appreciate them letting us use the big space down there. And so we're going to talk a little bit about it. Talk a little bit about maybe teaching tattooing, teaching painting, teaching art in general. And so we had how many people do we have? 8?
8 total students, yes.
Yeah. So, and, just to kind of paint a picture of what it looked like, still life's 3 objects set up in a box. Everyone sets up, paints based on your process, and you kind of guide everyone along the way, paint a little bit of demo, a little bit of back and forth.
Yes.
Yes.
The box is a shadow box. It's meant
Right.
to limit the amount of light pollution coming in so that we can maintain as close to a single light source as possible.
I like light pollution. I never think of it that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of light pollution in this world. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then there's a lot of drawing too, though.
Right.
Half the day is drawing. It's not just painting, but that's meant to show students how fundamental, accurate rendering is before you even begin to paint.
Yeah. And I think everyone was a little bit surprised at how much drawing I think there was. Was that surprising on the front end for those of you who? It was literally the first half of the day was just blocking out. And we're talking about 3 shapes and 3 fairly simple shapes, like a cylinder, a cube, and a sphere.
Yeah.
So first off, why such a simple setup? And second, why the meticulous drawing before you ever touch a paintbrush?
Well, the simple setup is, as you saw, is to make sure we can get it all done in one day, because when you do this classical method of drawing from life, it's a very slow, meticulous, deliberate process. And even an object that we might consider mundane or simple, if you're trying to strive for maximum accuracy in how you're seeing that object and replicating it exactly from life, translating it from 3 dimensions into 2 on your paper or your canvas, it ends up taking a lot of time. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of plotting, measuring, comparing, assessing, reassessing, adjusting, and so I try to spend as much time doing those fundamental skills that we tend to overlook and kind of slack on as artists, because we're in a hurry to get to the fun stuff as quick as possible. So that takes about a half a day, and then at some point you have to just say it's good enough, because we got to get through all this content in one day. But really, to do a very precise drawing from life, you could spend days on it, not merely hours. So.
And you're really deliberate, and your method is it's based in mathematics. It's not like sight size eyeballing. I think that's right about here. I think that's right about here. It's a lot of you have a lot of what am I trying to say? A lot of tools in place to make sure that shapes line up the way that they should, and that and are represented as accurately as possible. Huh?
Yeah. So it does start with the things that you mentioned. A lot of sight size comparing and measuring with your drawing implement or an actual adjustable caliper, if you happen to have one. But I purposely choose geometric based objects so that it gives the students a chance to practice the fundamentals of perspective drawing. For example, cubes, rectangular shapes that are receding in 3-point perspective, and also the all important ellipse, circular objects shown in perspective so that the circle is distorted into an oval. And so that really helps train the eye-brain connection of the artist to see things accurately and precisely. And then the goal ultimately is to make fast and accurate decisions and be very efficient in what you do and how you work.
So as you sharpen your eye and uh, you end up doing less measuring, you're able to kind of see how things actually sit. Do you ever get to the point where you're approaching value and shape simultaneously, or are you always laying out a line drawing first? Like
In
in your
this,
work personally?
oh, in my work
Yeah.
personally,
Sorry, I'm jumping around.
I paint in different disciplines, so sometimes, yeah, I do both.
Yeah.
When I do looser paintings, such as like a plein air landscape painting,
Mhm.
I'll definitely combine or even skip steps to save time because it's a totally different context. But in a slow, deliberate studio realism process, yeah, I take it step by step to ensure just ultimate accuracy and realism.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so on to actually, so how long have you been teaching people? How long have you been doing this workshop in particular, the still life workshop?
This workshop is, I'd say, 3 years old.
So you've done it.
I
How about how many times do you think?
Oh, I mean, still only a handful of times, like really like once or twice a year.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
So
yeah, I mean, I would like to do it more, and hopefully this is a stepping stone towards that. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, so what other? But you've taught workshops other than this still life one. What did you
yeah. So
start
prior
with?
to this hands-on workshop, I've just done a lot of lecturing and seminars
Right.
where I'm just demonstrating things about painting and about technique through a PowerPoint slide presentation and just talking at people, which is much less of a intense learning opportunity for students than to actually work hands-on. So I wanted to take it to the next level.
What have you found doing that, taking it to hands-on, and dealing with like running the gamut of from beginners? We had a couple of people in the workshop that don't paint really at all, that went and bought paint specifically for this,
Yeah.
and then we have people that paint a lot. Is it difficult as you walk down the line to like to problem solve, to like take your brain out of very basic problem solving mode and then step to the next one and have a more like refined solution to a problem that maybe is more
Yeah,
like
I find it more difficult to backtrack than to build up.
yeah.
Um, I'm usually trying to encourage people to keep going towards the next step, because my brain's already strategizing about, okay, how can we push this to the next step? But sometimes you'll come across someone who's, and I need to mentally backtrack and sort of do a mental reset and then just be attentive to where they're at and try to meet their needs and meet them where they're at and get them to wherever their next step is,
Mhm.
regardless of which step that is. They just need to get to their next step.
Yeah.
So it can be pretty mentally exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, I could tell, because you just watching, you go down the line and you get someone to a point, and then and we talked about this I think last night, and then by the time you get back to them again, like the wheels have kind of come off. They've made a lot of decisions, and maybe the shapes have really started to change drastically, or maybe they've lost the light source altogether. And so it's like it's almost like you're juggling across the room trying to.
Yeah, and it's the way I designed this particular workshop. It crams a lot of information into just one 8-hour day, and so what you described might be a symptom of there's just so much information to keep track of, especially if it's new for somebody,
Mhm.
that they forgot like the information from 2 hours ago because they're focusing so hard on doing a good job on this hour's information.
Right.
So yeah, you see things tend to hit sort of like a mental overload, and then you got to back them up and remind them of what we did like before the lunch break, and sort of help them do a nice calm reset and
Yeah.
just be logical in their assessments of what they're doing and what problems need to be solved.
Do you have a specific order? I mean, I know you have an order of operations as far as your process goes, but whenever you walk up to a painting that has, drawing issues, value issues, maybe an inconsistent light source, do you do you have a good idea of where you start? Like, what is it? Do you always come back to shape first, or do you just look at do you do it by feel?
It's kind of a feel thing because there's only so hard you can push people during a workshop, and I don't ever want to be discouraging.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no one takes any of my instruction as being too hard. So I just try to feel out where someone's at and what might help them based on how I've observed them approaching all the challenges throughout that throughout the day's events. I might get a feel for like specific instruction that I think might help them.
Yeah. So far, doing this workshop, is it mostly tattooers that have taken it?
Yeah, it's like 99%. There's been a few non-tattooers.
Do you feel
Yeah.
like that's becoming more? I mean, for you, I guess it's common because you come from the tattoo community. But do you feel like tattooers are exploring as a whole a lot more, or do you think that that's a small percentage and they just happen to be taking your workshop?
No, I think as a whole it's growing just because the educational aspect of the tattoo industry is really taking off in recent years, and I think people are sort of getting the memo that in order to even just survive on a baseline level in today's tattoo industry, you need to be pushing yourself artistically most of the time.
Yeah. What do you find that most of what you're teaching since your process in still life painting is so specific? Do you think it translates well to tattooing? I mean, are you able to like? So I know in your book you draw parallels pretty regularly throughout the book about like how how that painting method relates to tattooing, but I didn't hear you talk about it at all during the actual workshop.
Yeah, I think, I'm thinking it in my head, and there are various times where I may mean to make a comparison, but there's just so much information, and I need to see what each student needs as an individual that sometimes I can't fit it in. So I didn't actually make many mentions this particular workshop I just did at your place, but it does translate over to tattooing immensely. Tattooing's a very precise craft. You have to be very methodical in tattooing. You can't just like scratch around and make a bunch of sloppy marks on skin. Almost always.
Right.
And so the patience, the meticulous, step-by-step nature, all those sort of overarching concepts translate directly. Maybe not the actual hand motions or some specific painting techniques. But the main concepts absolutely is a direct conversion.
Yeah, because it's very linear to start. It's a lot of shape comparison. Then you go from there, like just kind of breaking down the workshop itself straight into value, which is kind of the way you should be thinking of it. It's as important as anything in tattooing is strong contrast and clear values. And then you kind of approach color as the final element, huh?
Yeah.
And that's typically maybe not always the way that people approach tattooing, but the way that they should approach tattooing.
Yeah, I believe that too. I think that's how tattooing should be approached for longevity concerns. You can do any old thing for your immediate photo as soon as you're done, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road, like how's that tattoo going to look unless it has proper attention paid to value, contrast, the things you were mentioning.
Yeah. Do you feel like if you're thinking in terms of shapes, strong contrast, and a hierarchy of those shapes and values, do you feel like line work is essential? Strong line work is essential for longevity in tattooing, or do you think it can be substituted with strong contrast, maybe with not really definite edges in some?
Yeah, I think it can be cleverly worked around in many cases, not all, with strong contrast, big open shapes, alternating from extreme dark to extreme light, or even some much subtler things. If you're working on someone with incredibly pale skin, there's some leeway in regards to skin tone for sure.
Yeah. I agree, and I feel like coming from an older mindset of tattooing, that all the bones, the lines had to be perfect and built up, and all of your line weights in before you ever broke out a shader. And I'm happy to see that mindset kind of giving way to a more value and contrast based idea. So this workshop, one of the reasons we're talking about it, outside of just we had Nick in town, so we wanted to make sure we got him on the show again. We're actually going to release this workshop as a digital product. So as of this time right now, it's not finished, but by the time you're watching it, it will be. I don't know exactly how long it is. I don't know what the price point is. I don't know anything about it. I just know what it looks like. But if you're interested in checking it out, we'll have a link below this video, and you can do that. And we'll have a syllabus and instructions and what to expect and all of that kind of stuff. Just whenever you click the link, it'll be somewhere in there. We're gonna leave that up to Scott, right? I'm sure he'll knock it out of the park. He's so good at that stuff. Are you taking any new appointments? No?
Yeah,
Are you?
I am.
All right. Where is the best way to get you?
Through email, through my website, and I'm in Austin, Texas, and I do take new appointments when I have time.
Yeah. So Nick, is it Nick Baxter just nickbaxter.com?
Yes, correct.
And then there's another one for your painting, right? Nicholas?
Yeah, my fine art focus website that just covers my painting is nbaxter.com. Just the first letter of my first name and then my last name.
What do you take any commissions, or do you mainly just paint and list what you have to say?
Yeah, occasional commissions if it's the right fit and the right match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, check it out. I'm sure you guys already know his work pretty well, but nickbaxter.com. If you want to get tattooed, maybe you can. You got to go to Austin, though. That's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time.